Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate, and I am honored to be having with me over the program for tonight Ambassador Hamdy Saleh, the former Assistant Foreign Minister. Thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate. Of course, we will be having more details regarding the meeting or the press conference between His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the Japanese Prime Minister. But I would like to ask first about the importance of the African tour in general for the Japanese Prime Minister, and to be choosing Egypt as the first visit for his.
Yeah, let me say that this is a very important visit for Japan and for Egypt.
Yes.
From a three perspective. One is what you call a strategic political perspective. Second is strategic economic perspective, and third is historical. And I'll keep the historical to the last comment.
Yes.
But political, the strategic political, here we are facing a very parallel movement by the country of China and the country of Japan. The president of China visited the Middle East and to Riyadh and so on, and he was very interested to develop his relations with the Middle East,
Yes.
particularly with the oil producers. Here is the Prime Minister of Japan visiting the Middle East, the Arab world, to the center of the Arab world, Cairo, and also meeting with the representatives of all the Arab countries in the Arab League. It's a parallel diplomacy which is moving together. Here is two major powers worldwide.
Yes.
One of them is more sophisticated technologically, which is Japan, and is allied with the West and so on, which is really coming back to play the role of a major power. Whereas China was really moving very fast in this and trying to develop its relations with the Middle East and so on. So the visit of the Japanese Prime Minister to Africa is really another move which will emphasizing the Japanese role in the worldwide. And it's really moving very parallel to what the Chinese tried to do. The president of China went to Riyadh, but also the foreign minister of China toured the Africa, starting also from Cairo.
Yes.
It is very natural that anybody who comes to the Middle East and comes to Africa will come to Cairo first. Egypt is the center of both the three circles, so it's nothing new to that. If it will be a little bit funny if they don't do that.
Yes.
Particularly we are talking about combining a visit to the Arab world and to the African world. So that's something which is really, in spite of the fact that with the press conference of President Fattah al-Sisi and the Prime Minister of Japan were wrapped in what you call bilateral issues. Yet it is really not that issue. The bilateral issue is only a limited a concept which is, there is a more overwhelming concept behind this visit, which is strategic. The strategic relationship means that here Japan coming back to the Middle East and to Africa, emphasizing its role vis-a-vis China and vis-a-vis other world power,
Yes.
the United States, Europeans, and so on, and Russia. This is one point in the political arena. But the second, because you have now a world with so much trouble. You have this problem of the Ukraine, the war in Europe is really making Europe in a very bad shape and
Yes.
creating such trouble to everybody, including Japan. And of course, particular to the Middle East and to Egypt. So this visit is really trying to see how can two major countries, Japan and Egypt, can cooperate in really dealing with these troubles in Europe, and also these troubles in Africa, where we can see the Sudan and other things are really moving in Africa in a direction which is not very helpful to the process of development.
Yes.
So on a political level, this is an important visit to the country of Japan. It is also an important visit to Egypt, because Egypt has to deal with all these factors moving very quickly, either in the European war or in the African continent, or the development with regard to the price of oil and the impact of the division between Europe and the United States and the United States and the West at large and Russia. So exploring options for a medium-sized country which are moving into playing an important role like Egypt, it was very important for Egypt to meet with Japan and to see to what extent they can develop a strategic perspective. And that's why the President and the Prime Minister emphasized that we are going to raise the cooperation to what you call a strategic cooperation.
What does this entail, the strategic relations between Egypt and Japan for the future?
That's exactly what I said. It entails to be able to explore options with regard to all these issues. The relationship between other superpowers.
The political, the developmental, the economic.
And also with regard to, developing a particular vision with regard to what to do with the European war, what to do with Africa.
Yes.
A strategic means that, you have a more overwhelming capacity to try to deal with things together, not to deal with the small issues here and there. So that's basically what I'm saying.
Yes.
But on the other hand, this visit is important on what you call a strategic economic relationship. And strategic economic, your report mentioned so many things on the bilateral relations, of Japan contributing to particular projects in Egypt, including the museum and so on. But the bilateral relations is only part of what to see as the economic development worldwide, and how can Egypt and Japan can really cooperate.
Yes.
and develop a better framework for working together. The problem is that the economic framework is really worldwide. It's changing very quickly. Japan has to face the issue of the oil prices and so on, and has to face the issue also of the markets, how to market its product and how to develop its technology and so on. And Egypt has the same thing. It has to deal with these three issues as well. So in a sense, this meeting is to try to develop a certain type of understanding between the two countries on these three issues: the price of oil, what could be done, what are the indications in the future, what else could be done in terms of the Egypt helping in terms of the exportation of gas and exportation of oil and so on, and also how that helps Europe and relieves a little bit Japan and so on. So there is what you call a widespread type of issues, economic issues, which are worldwide, not only the bilateral issues of Egypt, of Japan coming to contribute to a certain project here and there, which is a limited thing, but in a sense, what is needed is to develop an understanding of what could be done together. A, in terms of the problems facing the world economy at large. B, in terms of how to deal with the international organizations, which are economic international, like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. And Japan is a very important contributor to these things, and Egypt now is negotiating with these institutions. And C is to what extent Japan can really look into the strategic situation. Is not the fact that they can contribute to Egypt at this particular time because Egypt in a difficult situation. No, it is really building the relationship which will be dynamic. If they help Egypt now, Egypt will help them later. So that is the process what you do, and that what we are talking about, strategic cooperation.
Yes.
Now I come to the last point which I mentioned in my opening, the historical perspective. There is a famous photograph of Japanese samurai coming to visit Egypt in 1800, when Muhammad Ali was building the country, and Egypt was developing as a major power worldwide, and Japan was not really in that stage of development.
Yes.
At that time, Japan was really made their mind to learn not only from the United States and from Europe, but also to learn from Egypt. And they sent a mission to learn about what Muhammad Ali and the Egyptian society was working at that time on. That historical process has to be remembered all the time, because there is always a need to learn what the Japanese do and what the Egyptians do, and how we can really compare things and achieve a certain type of understanding and so in developing a process of development. So what the Prime Minister of Egypt was talking about in terms of establishing Japanese schools, in terms of Japanese university, and the contribution to the museum,
yes.
This is part of the historical perspective, which is in Japan definitely appreciates very much the historical perspective of Egypt and its contribution to human civilization, and to what extent Japan can really develop ideas and benefit from that.
Yes, during the press conference between President Sisi and the Japanese Prime Minister, His Excellency President Sisi mentioned that Japan is supporting the development drive in Egypt. What is this benefit, or what does this benefit to Japan on the other hand? Because you mentioned that China is competing for Africa, the European Union, the United States, and now Japan as well. What is the benefits that they are going to be reaping afterwards?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I don't really like to put the things that, that Japan is coming to assist Egypt or to give money to investment and so on. That's not the issue. The issue is to develop a dynamic relationship where both parties will benefit. And that's exactly very, very clear.
Yes.
If we look into even to the bilateral relations alone, we are talking about Japan and Egypt, which is a market of 105 million people.
Yes.
Which is a very large market and which is really developing a very keen interest in the Japanese products, both electronics and other things and so on. And also the Japanese are very much keen to have some products from Egypt. You know, I was very much impressed with the fact that some Japanese tourists, when they were visiting Aswan, for example, carried with them small bottles like this, and you know, went into the middle of the desert and filled that with sand, and said, "We are taking that as a souvenir from Egypt." So they need to have something from Egypt, which really to remind them of how the civilization started. There is a lot of interest in Japan to cooperate with Egypt, and you know, Egypt in terms of bilateral relations. Yes. But also, there is a very much interest in Japan to develop the same concept of, you know, connecting with the world. You know, the Chinese talked about, you know, the road of the Silk Road. Yes. And actually, the Silk Road was established by the Arabs, by the Arab traders. They connected China when China was
all the
isolated.
way to China.
They were isolated, and the Arab traders coming from our part of the world went all the way to China, brought their products to the Europeans, and so that was our road. So Japan now probably needs to have that same road which we really established with them, and that's part of the game. Yes. So the issue is that if we have a more, you know, what you call global perception of things, and dealt with the Japanese movement at this particular time, and also with other powers, in that perspective, I think we can do better.
If it is a give and take relationship between Egypt and Japan, because President Sisi mentioned that we need to be injecting more investments from Japan into Egypt, what can Egypt do in return in terms of exports, for example?
Now, Japan is coming a little bit late to the investment in Egypt, to tell you the truth. It's true, they have contributed to a couple of projects here and there, with regard to the culture, with regard to the university, and maybe other economic. But there is a lot of things to be done, and that will be very helpful to them. You have here, you know, a market, and also you have a labor which could be trained, and you have a center which you can really develop certain of the Japanese manufacturing, you know, institutions in order to manufacture that here and to export it all over Africa and the Middle East and even Eastern Europe. Yes. So there is a very major opportunity for Japan to come and to really work together with the Egyptian entrepreneurs. The problem actually is really on our side. The issue is that what you need, there is nothing called, you know, you need investment in terms of money. What you need is what you call workable projects, bankable projects which you can develop projects which everybody will know. If you put together that project, if they come as a partner with you, they will make money, and you will make money. It is up to our institutions, both the government and the non-governmental, the business community and so on, to develop a list of projects which could be bankable, which any bank will look at it and say, yes, this project will make money, we'll go for it. So this is the process. The Japanese are good business people, and they will come when they know that this is a center, they know that there is a lot of capabilities among the Egyptian young people and so on. And also they know that, you know, the Egypt is open to them, very friendly. And as a matter of fact, they can develop a lot of projects with us. The point is we have to develop a list of projects and, you know, feasibility study and so on, and to go to them and tell them. The problem with Japan, as I know from my colleagues who work in Japan, is that they need a lengthy time ahead. You cannot really ask them to make a contribution next month or seven months. They need at least 1 year to examine each project and so on. So I think there is a lot to be done, and it's not have been done yet.
On the other hand, diplomatically, between President Sisi and the Japanese Prime Minister, the Palestinian cause as well as the situation in Libya were discussed during the press conference. How do you see the shared visions of both countries regarding those issues?
Well, this is what I mentioned at the beginning in terms of the strategic relationship, in terms of Japan has to play a role, has to be heard about in the major issues worldwide. And you know, in the past, people used to discount China and Japan as not really participant in the game in the Middle East at all. And if they say, they make a statement here and statement here, and that's it. It's about time that, you know, the world now is moving very dynamically and the problems are rising everywhere. It's about time that they can have a more active role in dealing with these issues which have been continuing worldwide, but particularly in the Middle East. Yeah, the Palestinian issue has been a continuing issue for a long time, about 70 years now. And Japan knows exactly that, you know, justice is on the side of the Palestinians. Of course, as a country which wanted to be neutral and away from trouble for a long time, so they did not really move very actively in this. But, you know, it's about time they discuss that with us and discuss with the Palestinians and really take, you know, a more positive attitude, which I think they are doing that.
Yes.
The second thing is that you have problems now which are affecting everybody in the globe. I mean, you have the Libyan issue now is a major issue which really affected everybody because it's cut the oil production of Libya for a long time. It created Libya as a spot of trouble for everybody. And, you know, even illegal immigration to Europe and so on, and trouble and that. So this is an issue which also Japan has to take some positive attitude and to see what could be done and to cooperate with a country like Egypt, which is really the major country in this part of the world. And second, now the Sudanese issue.
Yes.
So the Sudanese issue now is becoming another global tragedy.
Yes.
You know, with what's happening in Sudan, and most of the foreign powers are really withdrawing their subjects and so on and their citizens. But nobody's really taking up an action in order to try to stop the war and to try to contain the tragedy, particularly the humane tragedy. You have to now to provide water and food and medicine to certain large number of people.
How do you see the role of Egypt, more specifically regarding Sudan nowadays?
Egypt has been taking a very cautious attitude,
Yes.
which is very correct, because apparently Sudan is becoming now, you know, in turmoil. Everybody is really trying to push his own from under the table to push the war and to see what they can be achieved. But, you know, Egypt is taking a cautious attitude and saying that, you know, basically we would like to have a settlement somehow and to cease a ceasefire and to continue a certain type of dialogue among the parties. However, my concern personally is that most of the other powers in the Middle East and abroad, and the Western Union and the Western world, meaning the United States and Europe, are interfering in the situation with their you know, undercover you know, process. Yeah, it's not necessarily that, you know, send your own power right away, but at least two countries are sending their own forces to the Port Sudan. So it is a very major problem for the world as a whole. It's not only for Egypt alone or for the Middle East alone. It is a major problem because, you know, Europe was complaining for a long time for over illegal immigration, and they were paying money even to Hamdy and so on to try to stop the illegal immigration.
Yes.
Now, who can stop the illegal immigration? With millions of Sudanese are really in a very bad shape. So it is a major problem for the world as a whole.
During the conference, the Japanese Prime Minister, he stated that, or praised the efforts made by Egypt on the humanitarian level regarding Sudan of evacuating the Japanese nationals from Sudan, as Egypt has done this with several nationalities as well as the Sudanese themselves into Aswan and the southern governorates. How do you see on the humanitarian level the role of Egypt regarding evacuating the nationalities from different parts of the world from Sudan?
Yeah, no doubt Egypt has done its own part in terms of evacuating, you know, its own citizens and also other countries' citizens and so on, and allowing large number of Sudanese to move on onto the borders through the two, you know, entrance zones in the south.
Yes.
However, the major problem will come later, even if we have a settlement in the near future. We have at our hand a major tragedy, an issue which has to be dealt with, a humanitarian issue which has to be dealt with. And that here comes the role of Egypt. I mean, all other countries are far away. Egypt is in the border, and the only country who has the facilities and capabilities to help in the medical service, in helping with, you know, repairing the electric, you know, system and also the water supply and so on. There is so many problems which will be facing Sudan.
Yes.
I don't think the Americans will send their own missions to help that quickly, or and I don't think the Ethiopians have these capabilities, or the Chad. So it really, it's up to Egypt to help that, and so historically we perceive Sudan as another part of the Egyptian people, and they were part of our country for a long time, and there was what you call tadakhul, the two people lived together for a long time.
Yes.
So, and intermarriage and so on. So it will be a major responsibility on Egypt to try to relieve the tragedy and here comes a country like Japan, which
Yes.
has money and has capabilities and so on, which can support the Egyptian effort in that later on. So what Egypt did in evacuating the Japanese citizen is only a symbolic move from Egypt to telling them we can help and you can help as well in the future.
Yes, Mr. Ambassador, we'll be taking a quick break, and the other report of the daily debate for tonight, which focuses on the economic bilateral ties between Egypt and Japan, and more specifically in the field of agriculture. We'll be having more details in the upcoming report, so stay tuned.
With the aim of improving agricultural productivity for food security in Egypt, Ambassador of Japan in Egypt, Oka Hiroshi, has recently signed financing agreement with representative of Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN FAO in Egypt to provide $3.8 million grant aid. The signing ceremony was attended by Minister of International Cooperation Rania Al-Mashat, Minister of Resources and Irrigation Hani Swalem, and the UN Resident Coordinator in Egypt, Elena Panova. The project will support Egyptian government's efforts to ensure food security by increasing water productivity in agriculture and resilience to climate change. It will target small-scale farmers in rural areas of Upper Egypt and Nile Delta with the introduction of modern irrigation facilities and solar-powered pumps, the installation of agri-voltaic greenhouses, and the provision of highly efficient attachments for agricultural tractors and heat and saline-tolerant crop varieties. Moreover, the project will collaborate with the Tottori University in Japan, known for its expertise in dryland agriculture, and the GICA's Improving Small-Scale Farmers Market-Oriented Agriculture Project to increase farmers' incomes. Al-Mashat said the project, which is carried out in partnership with the Japanese government and FAO, used integrated and innovative solutions to achieve food security and support rural communities. It also contributes to Decent Life initiative and falls within the UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework 2023-2027 that includes investing in human capital and environmental sustainability. She added that the project also represents new solutions in transitioning towards low-carbon, climate-resilient agriculture sector, which also complementing the country platform for the Nexus of Water, Food and Energy program. The project with the Japanese government and FAO aims to improve the utilization of water for agriculture, enhance water unit productivity, and increase water efficiency. He said that Egypt faces many challenges in the water sector due to the negative impacts of climate change. Climate change increases water requirements due to high temperatures. Therefore, the Egyptian government is carrying out major projects to increase water use efficiency and maximize water unit productivity. The ambassador asserted that in addressing food security, it is important to focus on each and every human being, and the Japanese government will work closely with the Egyptian government to provide food security with the aim to deliver affordable, safe, and nutritious food to each and every person.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate. As we did see in the past report, the cooperation between Egypt and Japan in terms of the economic fields in general, and more specifically in water security and agriculture in specific. And we'll be focusing right now, Mr. Ambassador, as you mentioned in the first part of the episode, that there was a meeting as well between the Prime Minister of Japan, Fumio Kishida, and the Arab League Secretary General, Ahmed Abul Ghait, today. How do you see the importance or the significance of such a meeting?
As you mentioned at the beginning, this is parallel to what the President of China did by going to Riyadh and meeting with the Arab leaders. So this is, what the typical Japanese do not really like the big show, and it is a meeting with the Arab countries all in the Arab League, their representatives, and expressing their views with their interests, the Japanese interests in developing relations with the entire Arab world.
Yes.
So that's a very significant thing. Visiting the Arab League means that there would be more interest in Japan in terms of the region at large. And apparently they talked about the fact that they are going to hold the Japan-Arab conference, economic conference, I think in a few months from now, which is being held every year, I think, or every 2 years, I don't remember. This is very important, but the point comes back to the Arab side to try to benefit from that.
Yes.
And Japan offers a lot of opportunities, and it is up to the Arab side, who is more involved in its own trouble and warfare and here and there, than looking into the future and looking into what could be done jointly in order to develop and a better life for everybody. That's it.
Regarding the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, because you mentioned the Ethiopians as well, how do you see the shared views of Egypt and Japan? Because it was this issue was discussed or raised during the press conference of President Sisi and the Japanese Prime Minister.
So far, the issue of the Renaissance Dam is so tricky. Nobody knows exactly what the hell they are trying to do, the Ethiopians, and why the major powers are really blind to the negative impact of this dam on Sudan and Egypt and even on Ethiopia itself. Because it's not, they were talking about this dam as a major producer of electricity. It has not produced any electricity so far.
Yes.
So whether it's only a political issue in order to try to deprive the other recipient of the Nile from their own share, what is the issue?
Yes.
So a frank discussion between Japan and Egypt on this will be very beneficial. Japan did not, usually does not take sides and try to play a neutral role, but at least understanding the dilemma facing Egypt and Sudan in terms of dealing with this tricky business will be very, very important. Also, that helps Egypt to see what the Japanese technology can help in terms of producing other sources of water, either the underground water or desalination and so on, which was a major issue of discussion, by the way, with the Japanese companies.
Yes.
However, I think this issue will have to be, it's very well connected to what's happening in Sudan, the war in Sudan and so on. And what will happen in Sudan will have an impact on what could be done with that dam in the near future.
One of the important issues as well that was discussed during the press conference was the views regarding the Russian-Ukrainian crisis and the situation nowadays. How do you see the shared views between Egypt and Japan and maybe the rest of the world, because everyone is being affected?
True. Japan is an ally of the United States and of Europe. And it is actually, they are very much preoccupied not only with the war in the Ukraine, but they are very much preoccupied with the situation in Taiwan and China. And there is a talk now about establishing a new NATO between Japan, South Korea, the United States and Europe and so on, in order to try to contain the problem which might erupt between China and Taiwan. So Japan is an important player worldwide. It's not really something, we have to take it very serious.
Yes.
And Japan, of course, since it's a partner of the Western Alliance, it sees that this situation has to be settled in a way to keep the independence of the Ukraine. Egypt is committed very much to the principles of the United Nations, which is indicating to the respect of the integrity of the countries. And as a result, we take a very cautious and very politically correct position with regard to the Ukraine. Now, we hope this war will stop. And we have, this is a nightmare for the world that to have a war like this, which could be continuing for now about 14 months,
over a year,
which
yes.
will really have a tremendous impact on the world economy and in Europe and in the Middle East in particular, and it has an impact globally everywhere. So, I think a meeting of visions between Egypt and Japan on this issue might be very helpful.
On the other hand, the Prime Minister of Japan will be going to 3 other countries in Africa over the upcoming days. One of them is Ghana, and then Kenya and Mozambique. How do you see the choice of those countries in Africa?
In a classical strategy, usually the Prime Minister or the Foreign Minister will have to visit 4 corners of Africa.
Yes.
A French-speaking corner, an English-speaking corner, and a Portuguese-speaking corner, in addition to the Arabic, which is Egypt. So, but when you are talking Ghana and what? And
Kenya and Mozambique.
Both of them are English-speaking.
Yes.
And Mozambique is Portuguese. So actually there is a missing link here, which is a French. But maybe they have another French connection somehow, because you have the French African countries are French-speaking,
yes,
are mostly a very large, part of Africa. So it's needed to be developed. But there is a tremendous contribution from Japan to these 4 countries which you mentioned.
Yes.
I was an ambassador to Mozambique, by the way, on one stage of my life.
Yes.
And I found that Japan was very much interested in Mozambique. And China as well. They are really, China is putting a lot of investment over there and really moving a large number of Chinese over there. So there is competition, and even the Americans are there and others. Unfortunately, Mozambique has a lot of trouble now. There's rebels, and there's conflict, and there's terrorists, and mujahideen, and so on.
Yes.
So a visit to these 4 countries are really very important. And I think it's indicating that, Japan is interested in the totality of Africa. And I think they might also send their foreign minister to the French-speaking countries.
Yes, Ambassador Hamdy Saleh, the former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate.
Thank you.
Anytime. And this brings us to the end of the Daily Debate for tonight. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.